So Standard is one of the formats here at the World Championships, and I have no better person with me than the reigning Constructed Master, Oliver Tiu, right here. Hey Oliver, good to see you. I saw you won the first round of Standard, and so we brought you up here to talk about your Constructed deck, your Standard deck, and has a very poignant name, Turbo Emrakul. Tell me why you chose this deck for this tournament.
I found it had a good band matchup, which is step number one for choosing a Standard deck. And I also expected some other Emrakul decks, and this is, in my opinion, the best deck at just getting Emrakul into play quickly.
All right, so name of the game is Turbo Emrakul. So let's just go ahead and look at some cards here that you've chosen. And speaking of Emrakul, you have 3 in your deck. Do you really need 3 Emrakuls?
Yeah, this deck's all about just getting a quick Emrakul into play. Generally, it costs 7 to 8 mana, and since I have so many ramp spells, it's not a big deal that I have so many of them.
All right, so a couple of other cards in your deck. I heard people say that Grapple with the Past is one of the most important cards in the last set to help enable such decks. Would you agree with such a statement?
Yes, it is a big part of this deck and helps you get to Emrakul while also giving you gas in the late game.
So I assume this is the same reason for Traverse the Olden Wall as well, right?
Yeah, Traverse helps you get lands in the early game, and late game it could just get an Emrakul or whatever else you need in a given situation.
All right, so there's also some part of a Delirium theme going right there.
Yep.
So is that a reason to also include Ishkana? Because I don't think you have black mana source in this deck.
No, it's just a speed bump in this deck. Buys time for you to get Emrakul into play.
All right, cool. Let's move on to the other slides here. So, all right, so it is Turbo Emrakul, but there's more Eldrazi here. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about the interaction between Kozilek's Return, Emrakul, maybe some of the other Eldrazi, and why it's important?
Yeah, so Kozilek's Return is in this deck because with all the self-mill cards, you're just able to get one into your graveyard, and then it's free Wrath when you play one of your big Eldrazi creatures. And even though you're generally playing the Emerge creatures for less than 7 mana, they still have the converted mana cost of 7 mana to trigger the Kozilek's Return.
Yeah, and that really helps sweep the board,
Yep.
keep it clean, and get you going for that Emrakul. So how important behind Emrakul you reckon the LD Fin is? Because we've seen the Pro Tour be a breakout tournament for this card.
Yeah, very important. Generally gets you an extra turn because you just tap down all your opponent's lands, or in the late game, it could buy you time just by tapping down creatures.
All right, so let's keep moving on to see what you are doing to get there. In there. This is a very interesting composition of creatures. Talk to me a little bit about why you chose the exact numbers for these creatures specifically.
Yeah, so Primal Druid is very important in the deck because it's a good creature to sacrifice to Emerge creatures. But drawing multiples could get awkward if you don't have an Emerge creature, because just kind of sit and play, don't do anything, which is why we didn't decide to play the full 4. Pilgrim's Eye is good in the deck because it counts as an artifact for Delirium and Emrakul purposes. Jace is good because with Gather the Pack or the Vessel, you're just able to flip it really quickly. And then it could buy back Traverses and all sorts of fun spells late game. And Nissa kind of has the same role as Pilgrim's Eye, except it also just could turn to a Planeswalker late game.
Right. Do many games are there many games where you primarily use the Planeswalkers to get ahead on the board and then finish off the game later, or are they just merely speed bumps?
Yeah, they could actually be win conditions. Jace could help you get Emrakul by flashing back Traverse, and Nissa is just a card draw spell late in the game, and also flips pretty quickly because you have some ramp spells in the deck, and Primal Druid.
All right, let's look at those ramp spells then. All right, so you mentioned Delirium, and I know it's really hard to find a good enchantment in Standard.
Yeah.
So you're playing 4 Vessels. How important are they, would you say?
Vessel is probably the best card for getting Delirium in the deck. It basically instantly does it because it's an enchantment itself and mills you for 4 cards. Yeah, so it's very important in the deck.
So you mentioned ramping. So Nissa's Pilgrimage alongside the Primal Druid is probably the only really pure ramp spell you have in deck. Ideally, you want to play it on turn 3. How important is it maybe in the late game?
It's less good in the late game, which is why we decided not to play the full 4. But it's very important on turn 3 and helps your deck get going.
Yeah, and really helps you get towards that Emrakul with all the force that you're finding with that one. And also, 2 of Gather the Pack. I assume you really want the spell mastery, but you're probably happy just casting on turn 2 and getting going. Yeah. All right, let's keep moving along then. Since you mentioned this is a Turbo Emrakul deck, you have those Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. I want to touch on this because a lot of the other Team or Emerge deck, they're running Sanctum of Ugin.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to play the Shrines compared to the Sanctums?
Well, Sanctum is less good in this deck because you just want all your lands in play, and Shrine is like the opposite of that, and you double lands, so it helps you get your Emrakul into play.
Yeah, so probably works also better now that you also play the Nissa's Pilgrimages, where you are able to get those lands into play.
Yeah, it also helps you hard cast the Emerge Eldrazi, like Elder Deep Fiends, because if you have 7 lands in play, this is the 8th mana for the Elder Deep Fiends.
All right, the rest of the mana is pretty self-explanatory. And last slide is just a couple of lands. I want to touch on maybe people who like this color combination. What would you recommend? Obviously, you're playing this deck, but there's 2 very different Rug Emerged sort of decks. Like, why is yours better than the other one?
Well, this one has a huge edge in the mirror match because in the mirror it's just all about getting to Emrakul quickly, and this deck is just built with that in mind, unlike the other deck, which has maybe like 1 Emrakul and just tries to get value along the way.
Is there any decks you're scared of, maybe?
Blue-Red Burn, I didn't really expect it to be a big deck because it has a bad band company matchup, but that matchup is basically unwinnable.
All right, fair enough. All right, good to know. Thank you, Oliver Tiu, for having us. That was Turbo Emrakul here at the Magic World Championships.